Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always by my co-host Nick Velato. And today we are coming to you live from Giants training camp. Well, not technically. Nick is already back home, but Nick was live at his first training camp practice, the first Giants padded practice. And what do we get again today? Another national reporter who's been around Giants camp. Yesterday it was Mike Garafolo at night. Today it was Kay Adams, who just notices a different vibe, a different feeling around the Giants. Kay Adams asked Malik Neighbors today after practice about it, and Neighbors didn't mince words. He said, there's new quarterbacks in here. And, this is something we've heard from Slayton, Wandale. The vibe is that there's no need to guess. The new quarterbacks that have entered Giants camp, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson specifically, and Jaxson Dart, have offered a new vibe for this team and a new feeling of hope, we hope. And then there's the other side of the ball, what Neighbors mentioned later in his interview, Abdul Carter, and the vibe that he's added to, the culture that he's added to. So I'm going to ask you specifically today, Nick, some thoughts on those two players, Russell Wilson and Abdul Carter, obviously. But I don't want to start there. I want to start with just your overall feel for Giants training camp today. How did it feel being back? What was different? Did you talk to any of the beats? Did you get anything going? Any juicy gossip for us?
Juicy gossip, not as much. It was great, man. I like being boots on deck there, seeing some of the listeners in the crowd shout me out and chopping it up with some of them is always a great time.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, people, we have a good listenership here at the Big Blue Banter podcast. And then also just seeing the beat guys, be like, oh, Nick's here. What's up? I'm like, oh, you guys remember me? That's cool. So yeah, it was good overall. It was hot today for sure. Yeah. Hot. And it wasn't look, I don't want to bury the lead here. The practice, it wasn't there wasn't a ton of events in practice. It seemed like they're really gradually ramping the hitting up. So today was, hey, first padded practice, offensive line finally gets to take their frustration out on the defensive line. So there was a lot of just running periods with the offense backed up in their own end, starting on the goal line, then to the 20, then to the 40. They didn't do any red zone drills on offense specifically. So it was a lot of that, and then working the play action, and then they would mix in a few deep passing concepts and just passes in general. But it wasn't this very eventful practice. I think it was more just a gradual buildup. And the one-on-ones, which would be the most eventful part of the practice, of course, the Giants put that away from the media and away from the fans as well in the stands. I was able to, maneuver my way next to Dan Duggan and a couple of the other beat guys and got my eyes on and saw some of the wins and some of the losses, talked about how Kayvon beat Hudson a few times. I tweeted about it. Kayvon ended up retweeting that because I said death taxes and James Hudson fighting in practice. Those are three things that are guaranteed. And it lived up to it, although it wasn't necessarily a fight with Kayvon and James Hudson. It got broken up and the period ended after Hudson threw Kayvon on the deck and had some words and they got in each other's faces, but no punches thrown this time, which is good because we don't need any unnecessary injuries.
Yeah, that is good. I'll probably jump around a bunch when we talk with stuff we're talking about. But the first thing that comes to my mind by far that I want to know is, what does it look like watching Jaxson Dart throw passes live? Because we've watched all the tape. We've seen highlight videos. There's one thing to that. There's something to that, but it's not the same as actually watching that ball release in a live format where you could actually see it fly out his hand. And just give me some thoughts on what that looked like to you.
Yeah, he has zip on his passes, but there weren't any passes today where I was like, oh my gosh, that was a difference. And I don't want to blow smoke up the listeners' asses here. Like there wasn't really anything like that. Right. Like Jaxson Dart, or like all the quarterbacks, really, there were no throws like that necessarily in this practice because this practice wasn't necessarily tailored to that. I know Jaxson Dart held on to the football a little bit too long on one rep and ended up dumping it down to, I think, Montrell Washington. It would have been a sack well before that. At that point, he had a couple nice passes, one to Montrell Washington that was dropped on a 7 route. It was a little bit overthrown, but Washington still needs to bring that in. I believe I put that one up on Twitter if people want to check it out. But yeah, he has an NFL caliber arm, but there wasn't one throw that Jaxson Dart made in this practice, or Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, Tommy DeVito for that matter, where I was like, wow, what an elite throw that was. Just wasn't really that type of period.
Yeah, and I wasn't framing it as in that. I'm not looking, but yeah, no, I know you weren't. Just we're not looking. I'm just curious what it looked like to watch him throw live, because that to me is just a big barometer. When I've been to some Giants camps back in the day when I was with 24/7 Sports, and it just, you could see the difference in how the ball jumps out with like the 3 or 4 different quarterbacks that were on the roster at that time. Eli was still on the roster, so that was like a very different level of velocity than some of the other quarterbacks. But I've seen Jones in camp too, so I'm just curious how it kind of stacks up. Maybe towards some of those, but we'll get more of that, I think, as camp goes on, like when it's less of a run design day. And I think the Giants probably were smart about ramping things up and not just going right into full hitting, full speed collision type practices.
Yeah, we've already had enough collisions with what happened with Brian Burns and Wan'Dale Robinson. Brian Burns talked with the media after practice too, and he discussed that. He said that was really scary, you know? It's like you just got to lay on the ground at that point, just hope like everything's working for you. And he said, I'm going to not be hustling like that, towards the end of some of the practices because I don't want to be put myself into that position. I also learned what a JIT was, which I didn't know, because Brian Burns was talking about Abdul Carter, and he was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to, I don't need to speak for him. I'll just say jit's a dog. And I was like, what the fuck is a jit? I had no idea.
It must be a Southern word.
It is. It's a Southern word for like a youngster, I think. And
wow.
a bunch of us old beat guys were look at me referring to myself like I've been on the beat. Well, a bunch of us old people were like, what the fuck is jit, Man. Yeah, seriously. And
your typewriter.
It's a funny little a little typewriter, my little Rolodex and everything.
Yeah, that's old Nick. You should have put on an old timey voice for that segment, but it's okay. I'll let it pass this time. But yeah, so a couple other things I wanted to get into with you before we talk about just some general observations on practice. Run game wise, that's obviously something they worked on a lot. I read after practice, Jermaine Illuminor had an interview, and he talked about how he felt like it was a good day for the Giants offensive line. I saw some clips of Evan Neal in double teams with Illuminor. Illuminor even mentioned he likes having Evan Neal next to him for some of those double teams. I saw a screen pass where JMS did a great job getting out, moving, locating Bobby Okereke, and kind of looked like he planted him to the ground. I felt like it was just a good location by him on that block. What did you see from some of the run drills, the offensive line in general? Are they gelling a little bit better in the run game, maybe?
It seemed like it. It seemed like it for sure. They were moving some bodies up front. Evan Neal looked the part at guard, right? Like he's starting right guard next to Jermaine Illuminor, and they're getting hip to hip and they're moving bodies. But that's not a surprise. Like Giant fans and people who listen to this podcast, they know like Evan Neal has that capability. Yes, he's high into contact sometimes, but he's so freaking big. And as Illuminor spoke after practice, his hands are like double the size of Jermaine Illuminor's. Once he gets inside of you, he can really control you. They're like vice grips attached to his arms. The problem with Evan Neal is pass protection, knowing exactly what his assignments are. And then there's so much that has changed for Evan Neal. That's why I'm glad that Jermaine Illuminor is there to kind of guide him and show him what he exactly needs to do to thrive at guard, because this guy has played tackle for most of his professional career and it did not work out. But yeah, no, once he gets hip to hip with an offensive tackle or a center, he can really generate so much force through the ground and then into contact that he can move people. And he was moving a lot of defenders off of not Dexter Lawrence necessarily, but a lot of these defenders at the point of attack on the line of scrimmage, and then positioning himself to allow Tyrone Tracy Jr. or Cam Skattebo to find the cutback lane. That's all well and good. And he was earning first team reps as well. Dan, if it keeps trending in this direction, and if he is capable and competent as a pass protector, I could see him starting, which is the upside that you and I have talked about for so long at this point, right? Like, this is a 24-year-old who you spent a top 10 pick on, and Evan Neal. You want this player in the lineup. He's in a contract year. This is the last year you're going to be able to see of him. And GVR is fine, but GVR is like 11 years older than this guy, and he's going to be your primary swing interior offensive lineman. So I'm hoping that the steady drumbeat doesn't just fizzle out, and Evan Neal can continue to ride this positive wave of physicality in the run game and then translate that into some pass game success so he can be out there, because I think that is the highest. Actually, I know that is the highest upside for this offensive line.
Yeah, you know it, and you're right about it. And I think about just this highest upside for the Giants in general as a team, and how do we get them winning football games in 2025? Because obviously the schedule is really hard, but I do have belief in this actual roster they put together. To me, a lot of it is they're going to have to run the football a lot better. We talked a lot this whole offseason, Nick, about how they have to stop the run better. That I agree with. We know about that. We discussed it. I don't think we've all just collectively spent a lot of or enough time on, just because of considering how bad the pass game is, we focused a lot on that, I should say. We focused a lot on that. The run game hasn't been great either. And I think the way this team's set up to win is going to be through a run-based offense. I know that's not really what Daboll's wanted to do in the past, but Daboll's not calling the plays. Mike Kafka is. And Mike Kafka was committed to the run at a lot of times during that 2022 season. So I want that upside of having Evan Neal in the lineup. I want to even start with that and then go to GVR if we need to. That's like would be my ultimate plan, because he's always there and he's always a bit able and a bit, to operate in that way. I want to ask you one more question. I don't know if you got any eyes on him, at least on this position group. I don't know if you got any eyes on him, but did you notice anything interesting about James Hudson? Because he's just a unique player to me, because the Giants gave him a pretty sizable contract to be essentially what in my mind is they're telling us we've effed up at swing tackle for years here. we got a solution now. But he wasn't really a solution on the field last year when he played in actual games. How does he look so far in camp, or how did he look today?
I don't think he's a solution quite yet. I wouldn't say that right now. He's starting left tackle because Andrew Thomas is not there. He has to go up against Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter. So he has some of the toughest assignments, and this dude plays with a massive chip on his shoulder. If we go back to minicamp, he fought Brian Burns. It was his whole thing. Today, he got into it with Kayvon Thibodeau a little bit. So he's losing a lot of those reps. Now, there was a run game rep that I saw him celebrating after, like significantly, to the point where I'm imagining whatever block he had to throw and I couldn't get eyes on the block, he was successful in it. Overall, I would say that he's not having the best camp, and he's having to fill a void and fill shoes that doesn't necessarily have the skill set to do, but he certainly has the mentality and the confidence to do so. And that's one of the reasons why I think we're seeing so much of this fight, is because this guy plays through the whistle all the time and has that type of tenacity you want in an offensive lineman. And some of the defensive players take exception to that, but he's not necessarily somebody I want to see the field so far. Neither is Stone Forsythe. And we've talked about the depth on the offensive line and how it's improved, and I still stand by that, but I still am not certain that any of these depth pieces are players that I want to see on the field, other than GVR if GVR isn't a starter. So we're still not necessarily in a great position from an offensive line standpoint, but really no NFL team is when it comes to like your deep depth and some of the personnel you have on the back end of your roster.
Yeah, and that's really the point of it. When you said it, it's all about perspective. Like, we are in a much better place from a depth standpoint, but that's relative to where we were at as a franchise, which is like the worst of the worst. I still feel like in the NFL, it's almost impossible to find swing tackles. They'll just sign and they'll just get money from a team to start. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was interesting too. He was taking some snaps at right tackle in the one-on-ones. So that I just found that to be interesting, because he's more than likely just the overall swing tackle. I don't know if they're going to try to focus, like, hey, you be left, Stone Forsythe will play the right tackle position, or if it will be James Hudson, because that rep that Kayvon Thibodeau, so Kayvon Thibodeau beat him twice in a row, and then in the third rep, Kayvon hit his face, and then you see James Hudson kind of get a hold of him and just pull him down to the ground. That was all at right tackle, and it's just interesting because he's playing left tackle right now with Andrew Thomas out.
Yeah, and I wonder if you, just as we keep it on this and we'll jump around, but did you see anything from Marcus Bowe? Because I do wonder, based on what I saw at film, I don't think it's going to be as big of a jump as the round he was drafted and suggest for him to be able to play in the NFL. Is he maybe a swing tackle option already for year one?
So he looks small. That's one thing I will say. Just being out on the football field, looking at him next to all the other offensive linemen, I'm just like, he looks like a small guy. Like, and it's funny me saying that, right? Like, this dude's probably like 299 pounds or 305 pounds or something, but he just looks kind of short, a lot smaller than the other offensive linemen the New York Giants have. But in fairness, the other offensive lineman the New York Giants have is like Stone Forsythe, who's like 6'8", James Hudson, who's like 6'6". Bo's a little bit shorter than that. I saw one-on-one rep from him where it was just smooth mirroring, and he was able to anchor down and get in front of his assignment, and it was just an absolute win for the offensive lineman, which is tough in those one-on-one drills, because those one-on-one drills are tailored for the defensive player in the trenches, 100%, just like they're tailored for the offensive player when it's the wide receiver. So the wide receiver knows what he's going to be doing. But Bo had a great rep, and I don't have exactly who it was because it was so far away, but I just saw his number and noticed that he certainly came away with a stonewall, as did John Runyon as well. And I believe I put that, I don't have it in front of me, but the player that he defeated, just absolute stonewall. That was one of the better reps in the one-on-one period from John Runyon, who was back out there. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we all love to work out. The summer's coming around. You want to look good in your bathing suit, but in order to enhance your workout, you want to go and use MitoPure from Timeline. This is a great product. When I started using it, it makes me feel stronger, gives me more energy. I recover quicker. You know, I'm in my 30s. I still have the energy to work out. And if you want that energy, you really should give Timeline's MitoPure a shot and work it into your routine. This, the great year of 2025, is your year to be the best, most energized, most revitalized you. MitoPure promotes cellular renewal and mitochondrial health to address common signs of aging at the root. MitoPure is the research-backed innovation that unlocks your fullest potential. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure right now. So go to timeline.com/banter. It's timeline.com/banter. That's Timeline.
That's good news, I think. Ultimately, I'll be interested in tracking that throughout camp because Bo's a player I have a lot of excitement for moving forward for the Giants. I just don't know if I'm ready or should be ready to be excited about it this year. It might be a developmental thing, especially if you bring up the thoughts on maybe he's just somebody who needs to put a little bit more on his frame as he moves forward to try to play that tackle position. We'll see if the Giants have that in mind as well. It's obviously going to be his first year in NFL training, but also getting like the NFL treatment, which is, the cafeteria experience. Like, you're getting fed well. Like, if you want to put on weight at an NFL program, especially if you're the Giants player, you will be able to. Maybe that's not the same for Bengals players with that owner, but the Giants are definitely not cheap in that regard, from what I've heard. But listen, another player, or maybe we can shift it to the other side of the ball a little bit. You mentioned Kayvon Thibodeaux and some of the one-on-ones. Yesterday at training camp practice, I heard Brian Burns kind of talk about just how different Kayvon has been this year. And he didn't really mention it in exact words, but he basically, in my mind, at least the way I interpreted what he said, is he's more focused and he really wants to get out there and like prove himself. And I get that, right? Like, if you're a professional athlete and they draft Abdul Carter, dude, just 2 years after making you the 7th overall pick, like, what does that signal in your mind? It signals a sense of urgency, I would imagine. For me, that's what it would signal. So have you seen a different Kayvon at all? What have you noticed from 5?
No, I mean, Burns was speaking today after the media about Kayvon Thibodeaux, and he mentioned that this was evident to him last year, that Charlie Bullen, the outside linebackers coach for the Giants, really helped light a spark under Kayvon Thibodeaux. And there wasn't anything today in practice that Kayvon did other than him getting into it with James Hudson and winning 3 consecutive reps against James Hudson. That makes me be like, oh, that's the fire that we're thinking about. But I would imagine he would do that even if that switch wasn't flipped, right? So I'm not reading too far into it. I'm going to trust what Brian Burns is saying when it comes to Kayvon Thibodeaux, and I'm hoping that we see a better version of what we've seen from Kayvon, which I believe we saw towards the tail end of last season once he came back from injury, and now you have Abdul there. And as Brian Burns said after practice, you do Burns, Dex. There's going to be one-on-one matchups for a lot of these guys, and it's just going to be, can you defeat your one-on-one matchups? And I got to imagine when Dex gets a one-on-one matchup or Abdul gets a one-on-one matchup, they're going to be able to consistently defeat that. Kayvon too. And then maybe not consistently, but Kayvon can win those one-on-one. Like, the Giants are in such a good position from a pass rushing standpoint. And as Brian Burns said after the practice, man, like, Abdul Carter, it's just like, there is this sense, and you mentioned it at the top of the show, when it comes to Abdul Carter, that every player on the Giants knows that he's him, right? It's a similar sense that we got last year with Malik Neighbors, right? Malik Neighbors showed up and everybody kind of knew, like, this guy's legit. Like, you don't even need to necessarily talk about it. He steps on the football field and his presence is felt when it's a pass rushing situation. Again, that's going to be something he's going to have to overcome on these early downs. Can he consistently defend the run in a manner that you want your edge rusher to defend the run and not just kind of avoid blocks? We'll have to wait and see. But when it comes to rushing the passer and what you can do with Abdul Carter, everyone knows that this guy might be like the best player on the defense this season. Like, that's crazy to think about, though, because you have Dexter Lawrence there. But I don't think it's as insane as it sounds right now. If I had to put money on it, I'd say it's still Dexter Lawrence, because of just how freakish he is as an athlete and how big he is and the mountain of a man that he actually that he truly lives by. But when it comes to Abdul Carter, man, I think all the players know, and as Brian Burns was just talking about, it's like, dude, this guy's really good. We have a really good football player, and it's going to be a problem for the offense.
It is. He'll be right away a really good football player. That's the interesting thing. When it came to Neighbors last year, there was a lot of hype. And then right away, he was that focal point of the offense and a really good football player. That's rare. That doesn't happen all the time with rookies. It does tend to happen with some of the rookies that are the best of that bunch of a given draft class. And I really think we're starting to trend toward a possibility in a world where the Giants might have gotten the 2 best non-quarterbacks out of each of the last 2 draft classes, which is certainly a possibility right now. And there's just no way in my mind that can't lead to more future wins and a better roster health doing that. And I know, look, ultimately the goal is, and the end is, like, if you don't have a quarterback that's good, you're not going anywhere, even if you draft 1 million Neighbors and Carters. Now, kidding. If you draft 1 million of them, if you have 10 to 12, you'll go somewhere like the Eagles. But and the Eagles have a good quarterback in Hurts. But, like, point being, like, you're capped. But that's not like how I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at how do we stack the most talent on this roster. And I feel like they've done a good job of that with those 2 draft picks in the last 2 classes. I have no regrets on either front. I have no regrets on the front of going Neighbors over Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and any of those guys that were available. And I stand by that. And I know that's controversial with some Giants fans. But I don't care. It's how I feel. It's how my evaluation from watching the film on all the guys and just my evaluation on, generally speaking, roster building. And then this year, I feel, Nick, like I'm kind of okay that the Giants lost the first pick, to be honest with you, and didn't get Cam Ward out of it and got Carter and Dart, I should say, because I just feel like Carter's such a lock. And I don't know necessarily that I felt that way about Ward, but I know that I feel that way about Carter. And so I'm excited to hear that. After practice, Neighbors said there was a rep yesterday during training camp, Monday or Sunday's practice, where Burns was on the sideline getting a breather and Carter had a move. I believe it was probably one of those 2 moves we featured on yesterday's show when we did the video breakdowns, but Carter had a move and Burns was like, bruh, this kid is special to Neighbors. Yeah. And it's just the feeling these players get and you yourself gets watching this.
You know, Luminor said the same thing too. Luminor's like, hey, he basically said iron sharpens iron. I want to practice against Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau because they bring the best out of me. They're making me a better player, and I'm making them a better player, hopefully. But he was like, yeah, man, Abdul Carter got me on that one move yesterday. It was just, you know, kid is legit. The kid is just a legit football player, and it's exciting to have him on the team.
Yeah, and Luminor is a good, at least at least average, but probably above average to good tackle in the NFL, especially in pass protection. And that's like, a good sign at least. I can't wait, Nick, to see Carter versus Andrew Thomas when Thomas gets into camp. That's something I've been looking forward to since they drafted Carter, because that's a matchup where if you think about all the reps we've watched of Andrew Thomas during the actual NFL games on our All-22 breakdowns, he's done a really good job against a lot of really good edges, to the point where we're just like, wow, that looks smooth and effortless at times for him. So I want to see how it looks against a freak athlete like Carter, who's not going to make it easy for him to be the dominant player he's been in pass pro, Andrew Thomas. I want to ask you a little bit about the other trenches right now, or sticking it on the defense side of the ball. You mentioned earlier Dexter Lawrence. I saw a play where Dexter Lawrence had really good penetration in the backfield, would have got a run stop, but kind of did the thing I've been asking these vets to do. He kind of just held up. Like he just kind of grabbed him for a second, held up, and kind of like, it looked like to me like he was smiling after it. But they pulled Dexter Lawrence soon after that, and that's when the Giants got some of their biggest runs in practice after Lawrence left the field. Roy Robertson Harris has been getting starting reps next to Dexter Lawrence pretty consistently from what I hear, Nick.
Yeah.
How's he looked, and how's the rest of that interior defensive line look when Lawrence isn't on the field?
It was hard to really tell because they were so far away, even in team periods, and they were cycling through people. And I'm trying to just like calculate who's with the first team, who's with the second team, who's earning, and they're cycling dudes in and out. But the Giants were able to run the football in today's period. But as Brian Burns, again, not to bring him up again, but as he said after practice, it's like, dude, we can't really tackle these guys. Like you have these running backs like Cam Skattebo running directly into you, and they're shrugging their feet, which is all well and good. But like, I can't, as a defensive player, and you guys know me, who listen to the podcast for a while, I always I pay my fealty to the defense just because all the rules are skewed against them. Like you can't bring them down, so you just kind of like stand there and you're like, all right, come on, and just like slide off of them. So without fully tackling, it's a little bit hard to tell how many of these runs would have sprung as far as they did. But it looked like they were generating a lot of force up front. The double teams were clean. Evan Neal was one of the primary reasons for that, I would say, when the first team was out there. The Giants were also hitting little slip screens frequently and getting these big dudes out in space. We saw the one Cam Skattebo one I put up on Twitter. There was one with Tyrone Tracy Jr. That was, I believe, the play where Bobby Okereke got absolutely annihilated by John Michael Schmitz. But again, Okereke kind of lost his footing on that play. So it looks a lot better than maybe it actually was. But still, what is JMS going to do? You know, he's going to try to take advantage of it and drive the guy into the deck and earn that win. So that's exactly what he did. But again, Dan, this is the first, practice with pads. So how much are we really going to read into this? Let's wait and see and be a little bit patient till we put the cart before the horse on how good this offense or defensive line is going to be against the run.
Yeah, it's something that we'll just have to monitor throughout camp. It's just early practice. I don't want to bury the lead too much. What I want to talk to you the most about, another player, like we've talked a lot about the buzz around Abdul Carter at training camp. There's another player who's gotten a lot of buzz, and he got some praise today from his head coach, Brian Dable. It's Cam Skattebo, 44. Oh, yeah. I think there's a non-zero chance, and by non-zero, I mean a 99% chance, so the opposite of non-zero, that the biggest surge in jerseys we'll see at the stadium this year will be 44 Cam Skattebo. This is a player who all fans are going to love very fast when they're watching the football games on Sundays. What have you seen from Skattebo today? How did he look out there? What are your thoughts on kind of how he's been progressing through games? Because I know he got his first team rep today.
Yeah, he was out there with the first team. He looks smooth, man. He looks smooth. His vision is exceptional behind the line of scrimmage. He does such a good job, and this was evident on his Arizona State tape. Does such a good job reading second and third level defenders and making a cut based off their pursuit to maximize his yards on the deck, really, like yards running the football. And they got him in the space a few times with like a screen passes and things like that. But like him and Tyrone, it's going to be a good 1-2 punch. It really is. I think Skattebo is going to be a fan favorite. Runs so damn low to the ground. He's shorter than I anticipated. Like when I saw him, I was like, he's really not like a tall guy, but he's thick. He's a thick guy. He's like a fire hydrant out there. So I'm excited to see what the Giants can do with a player like this. And I think he's going to embody everything it means to be a New York Giant and become a fan favorite in due time if he already isn't.
Yeah, I wonder what the rotation will actually look like once we get to the regular season. If Skattebo's already getting those first team reps now, or just a few first team reps, but I wonder how he'll actually be involved and used when the actual real games come. I don't know necessarily if he's going to have that big of a role early on. I hope he does, though. I think he's a weapon on this offense that needs to be on the field a decent amount for the New York Giants this year, starting right away in week 1. I even think back to last year, Nick, where I almost wish, and they did kind of hit the ground running, but I almost wish they hit the ground running right away with Tyrone Tracy at running back for just considering what he was able to do when he did get to play last year. I think Skattebo will be a similar story. Running backs are a quick study in the NFL. They can hit the ground running. We've seen that throughout the history of this podcast and just in general following the NFL. All right, let's see what else we got here. Art Green had a pretty sick interception, I thought, one-handed, big play there. Obviously not a lot of passing game work today, but that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, Art Green just freaking Randy Moss that shit, dude. A little bit underthrown by Jameis Winston, and he was able to make him pay. Jameis also had a play where he broke pocket, right? And he's running away from people. He wanted to throw it deep, but the coverage was good. And he done that whole Jameis Winston thing where it looks like he's about to look to his left and look to his right, but then he just starts like running. Like Jameis has a really weird and strange movement to him when he gets his momentum going. But I'm watching him out as he's running, and I'm filming it. And all I see like in the helmet is just this cheese and smile. It didn't come through in the video, but he's just smiling like a kid out there when he's like running and evading people, like just having a good time, right? After practice, him and Malik Neighbors were around a bunch of fans who were like getting autographs and they were just chopping it up. Definitely seems like a very lively team, a team with a lot of personality, something that I think the Giants probably have lacked for a long time. But you bring in this quarterback room, guys like Jameis Winston, Malik Neighbors is coming into his own as a leader and is feeling much more comfortable doing all of these interviews, being very personable. It definitely seems just like a different vibe in camp, which a lot of people are suggesting is the case.
That's a consistent, steady drumbeat, not just from you and others who are on the beat, but just from people who are off the beat. That's what really stands out to me, the national reporters and what they're saying about the feeling around camp. So I'm excited for that.
And with like
energy.
Yeah, and with Russ too, like he just has command. Like that's like the one thing I would say is Russell Wilson is he's fully in command of the offense. And that's not to say that Daniel Jones wasn't, right? But to see Russ out there, you just see like he is completely dialed into like what the play is going to be, gets his checks. There's time left on the clock. Like he has full control of when he's going to call that play. If he wants to leave 5 seconds on the clock, if he wants to take it down to 3 seconds, he seems incredibly comfortable in this offense already as somebody who just had his first padded practice in the offense.
So many fans, I think, take that for granted, to be quite honest, about playing the quarterback position. And you may not say it, and you don't have to, but I will say it. Daniel Jones was not in command of the offense. One of the major reasons we suck so much as an offense.
Well, I mean,
at his own version of his command.
Yeah,
that's not command of an offense. It's really the level you need. That's not the baseline you need.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead. Your thoughts.
I agree with you. Ultimately, it's more of like when I say command, I'm talking about more so just in training camp. There is no hitting here. Like Daniel Jones lacked command when it was a real in-game situation. But when he was in training camp, I felt like he had command of the offense, can get people in and out, and like he would do a solid job. And that's what I've been seeing from Russ. Now I've seen Russ for years have command of an offense while the bullets are flying. That's something that I didn't necessarily see from Daniel ever at a consistent level. I think it's probably fair to say.
Yeah, and we don't have to go back down that, but it is important to me to note. And I do think just even the smallest thing you just mentioned before about, getting the plays in on time, that was an issue at times with our last regime of quarterback. So
Yeah,
it is what it is.
With that said, Dable freaking
there were some
popped
pre-snap
that.
penalties, right?
Oh yeah, he popped the casket today, bro. He was just going off because there was like 3 false start penalties, all backed up by the goal line.
On who?
I couldn't see, man. I couldn't see, and I was pissed. Somebody might have that because I was more so to the left side.
Hopefully it was Hudson because he's not going to be playing anyway.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, and some of them were on the second team as well with Dart out there. Dart was Dart, I think, took every second team snap.
Wow.
I think he did.
It's consistent, man. It's been consistent that he's over Jameis on the depth chart already, which is definitely interesting.
Yeah, and you can see he's playing with guys who are probably going to make the team, like some skill position players who are probably going to make the team.
I know with Wan'Dale Robinson out today, he's injured, banged up his knee. Dable said before practice, nothing serious that we have to worry about just yet, but he was not practicing today.
Yeah, he was out there though, like not practicing, but he was out there with like a sleeve on his knee and just seemed in good spirits and everything.
Good. That's good to know. But I heard, or at least I read, and you can confirm if it's true or not, that Dalen Cambry actually got some first team reps as the slot. Anything interesting to note there?
Nothing interesting to note, but yeah, he was out there. It was for the install period. I think he might have earned one later, but that might have been second team actually. But it was during an install thing. They put him out there. Look, Bo Collins, Cambry, specifically, like those UDFAs seem to be making some name for themselves at this point. With Bryce Ford Wheaton down with the torn Achilles, which is absolutely terrible. There's a roster spot for one of them or possibly a Zach Pascal, who had a really nice catch over the middle of the field and broke a tackle. And then one of the defensive backs threw him to the ground afterwards. But it was a tight window throw from Jaxson Dart as well. So you looking at like the Zach Pascals, all those players, like everybody beyond Amir Smith-Marset, there's a lot of reps to go around right now with Bryce Ford Wheaton down and Wan'Dale Robinson on the mend and Jalen Hyatt not taking team snaps. Hyatt was out there doing indie drills, but he wasn't out there doing team. So you're going to have a lot of these guys being cycled into the first team, and they just got to make the most of those opportunities. But again, today there wasn't a ton of opportunity to make the most of because they didn't pass all that often.
Yeah, a little bit more of a lighter practice. I think I even read that it ended earlier. Speaking of Dart, though, I did see something after practice from Brian Dable that got me pretty excited. And I'll just read it to you. Brian Dable's answer on what he's seen from Jaxson Dart so far and what he likes so much about Jaxson Dart in practice yesterday. And that was Sunday when Nick and I discussed it, which was Dart's best practice. And Dable said, look, Jack, since he's been here, he's been steadily improving, learning how we want to run the football team from that quarterback position. He made a lot of good decisions, made a lot of things that we could go ahead and correct. He had some pretty efficient drives. It was a good quarterback play. Had a couple checks in there that he made on his own. That stood out to me. I'd love to hear that. Made some plays against different looks, some max pressure, some guys dropping off. He played on time. His feet were good. He played fast. He knew where to go with the football. Did a good job of leading guys in the huddle. It was a productive day for him. Still some things we want to look back and make progress. But I think it was really interesting to hear him say, look, he played on time and he did a couple things on his own when it came to making checks. Just something I like to look for as we move forward in camp.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I want to see any positive progression like that. And the other things will fall into place. But once he's comfortable in the offense and he really starts to get his feet underneath him from that perspective, that's when you can really start to see this kind of kid shine, who also has a unique personality and seems like he has a lot of leadership qualities. And a lot of people are discussing him in a positive light when it comes to that.
Looked pretty fast, by the way, the time on the play where he scrambled and then slid. I thought he looked pretty quick on that.
Oh, yes. He hit a slide and the crowd went wild. It was like, oh, look at that. He's sliding a little bit. And then Russ also broke pocket one play. He was probably going to get sacked by Burns on it, but he still broke pocket and and then he started rushing. And then when a defender came up to hit him, obviously they wouldn't, he flipped it like an option to Tyrone Tracy Jr., who was along the sidelines to pick up a few extra yards. It was like a creative little play. Just with every quarterback not named Tommy DeVito ended up breaking pocket at some point today, and we mentioned each of those plays.
Yeah. I also heard from Justin Pennick, and I wanted to get your take on this since I saw him tweet about it, that there was a play, maybe it was a comeback route or a hitch route, where Russ hit Neighbors on it. And he said it was one of the earliest releases he's seen from a quarterback from an anticipatory throwing standpoint. And he didn't really say that, but he said the anticipation on was great. He said the ball was out well before Neighbors got into his break. Did you notice it on that rep as much, or if you notice kind of the timing and the anticipation of the passing game of the first team? I know there weren't a lot of reps.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of reps. I actually think I got that play on camera, but the dude who stands there with the the damn stick was like kind of in the way, or maybe one of the camera guys was kind of in the way.
Funny.
So, but like I didn't post it, but yeah, it wasn't necessarily like it was a well-timed play, but it wasn't one where I was like, oh my God, look, it's so well-timed. It's just football. That's
kind of how I felt too watching it.
That's how football's supposed to be. Like that's just normal football one-on-one type shit.
I think it was a great throw, to be honest, either. Neighbors had to come back.
The neighbors had to go down.
Go down. Exactly. Like when I watch like Herbert and those guys make those like comeback hitch throws, the ball's like on the numbers. Like the receivers not diving low to catch the ball. It's like hits them and then they turn upfield. So like it's something, but I like the idea of just any version of anticipation in the Giants passing game. I'm just so starved for any kind of anticipatory throw.
I know. We also have that cornerback 2 battle continues to rage between Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott. They're trading first team reps. Flott had a nice PBU when he was working with the second team against Jaxson Dart and little Jordan Humphrey. It was a like a level. I'm not sure if it was a levels concept, but it was a concept that sucked the safeties up and then created a deep post behind all of the safeties, where it was Cordell Flott in outside leverage against little Jordan Humphrey running the post inside with the safety sucked up. So this is a play designed for the offense. I didn't think the throw by Jaxson Dart was elite. I thought it was left up there a little bit long, but it was put in a location that I think a good receiver might have been able to make a play on it. But Cordell Flott was able to work through the catch point and then knock it out of little Jordan Humphrey's hands. I got to say, little Jordan Humphrey, big guy. I was looking at him out there. I was like, dude, this is a big wide receiver. Not the fastest guy, though. Not the fastest guy in the world. So he's not.
It was a good rep, I felt like, by Flott from just watching it on the video.
It was. Yeah.
And I think he did a good job of staying in his back left hip pocket. But I also kind of agree. It was it was against Humphrey. Like, I need to see that against someone like even like a Hyatt type, to be honest, on a deep post, because like you're facing Javonte Smith in the regular season, you're facing Terry McLaurin in the regular season, you're facing at best CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens or CeeDee Lamb. Like these are different level athletes that will be able to separate. So
I agree. I like that Flott was able to stay on top of it, and like the angle of little Jordan Humphrey's route too, like posts, like they go to the post. This one was a little bit more flat. Like it would have been running to the flag on the opposite side, and Flott was still able to stay on top of that and then close with when he had to. But again, to your point, it's if that was Darius Slayton, I'd be a little bit more excited.
But that battle will rage on, and we'll see what happens there between Banks and Flott. I'm curious who's going to end up getting that starting role. Anything from the second level? We haven't talked a lot this camp about the second level. I don't know if you had any time to focus on them, but maybe today's practice was a little bit better barometer just because there's more run plays. I don't know. Anything from that?
What do you mean by second level? Like
just the linebackers, the off-ball linebackers.
It's tough to really see. I mean, Okereke is Okereke. He lost that one rep to John Michael Schmitz, but that doesn't define his entire practice. He was getting his nose dirty and fitting a run. It seemed like you would expect from a veteran linebacker who's as good as Bobby Okereke. Micah McFadden was out there doing that as well. Saw some reps where Brian Burns was operating as a linebacker in a 2-point stance off the line of scrimmage, similar to what we've seen from Abdul Carter. And then the safeties were quick to fit. That was another thing. Since it was a run period, I saw 8 and 27 flying up to the line of scrimmage to fit the run quickly and with bad intentions as well, even though they can't tackle. So that's all welcome sights. But yeah, not a ton to take away from the backups, right? Like the Muasaus. I saw them out there with the second team defense or the Deontay Johnsons, but I didn't really have a ton of takeaways.
Interesting. Anything else that I missed from practice, recapping it, just kind of trying to catch up from home, that you saw, or just any notes you had that were interesting that maybe the listeners would want to hear?
Now, we talked a decent amount about the running backs, right? Like it was a lot of that. Yeah. It was a lot of just getting physical at the line of scrimmage and the offensive line trying to dictate to the defensive line. And I felt like they were able to do that. And dude, that's what I want. And this is why we want Evan Neal. Circle this back to Evan Neal to be out there, is because last year, one of our biggest gripes with the offense, beyond the quarterback position, was their inability to really generate force and to move bodies off the line of scrimmage, right? That was one of our biggest gripes. It's like, dude, they're a much better and much more improved offensive line, but they're not moving bodies that much. A lot of the yards created was just off of Tyrone Tracy Jr.'s skill set, his eyes, his vision, his jump cut. If you put Evan Neal in there, that is a significant upgrade over GVR from that standpoint. Now, I think it would be a downgrade from other standpoints, but from that standpoint, and if we want to run the football and be a physical team, Evan Neal has to be in that starting lineup. It's just, can he not be a liability at guard, and can his slow feet and his lack of balance, can that be mitigated inside, since he doesn't have to protect his outside shoulder as it's not as much of a critical vulnerability because you have a tackle towards your side. Now, teams can still scheme against you, and that would happen against the Giants. It's just, would it be as big of a liability as it's been in the past when he was at tackle? That's the big question mark. And I think the Giants are going to evaluate this through the preseason games and through the next couple weeks in training camp practices. Can we trust Evan Neal out there? Because if you can, the Giants' run game is going to be significantly improved with him in there, and their ability to duo and hit inside zone and all of that, with Cam Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy Jr., which is an upgrade over whatever the Giants were trotting out there last year.
Yeah, you nailed it. Last year, I felt like a lot of what they did in the run game was independent with the running backs and big plays they made. Like you said, vision from Tracy, some explosive yards after contact, before contact, creative force missed tackles. Let's get some help. Like, let's get some plays where they don't have to do as much. We see that all the time with the Eagles, with the Cowboys in their respective run games. And I really respect what the Cowboys have done. They consistently draft offensive linemen up top in the draft. Even Tyler Booker this year, they didn't need him. You talked about like no team in the NFL ever has depth. The Cowboys do somehow have talented depth on the O-line. It's not somehow, they just keep investing there. So I'd like to see somebody like Evan Neal, who was a big investment, recover for this team and be an asset for them. And the only way that's going to happen is at guard. It's not a guarantee, like you said, but it's something that is a possibility for the Giants this year. So I'm definitely hoping he wins that job. Anything else or just feelings around camp or just anything you notice or any kind of fun facts or just something?
Yeah. I mean, the Giants re-signed Gunnar Olszewski, and
Yes.
I think that's something that we have to pay attention to, because the camp battle last year between him and Amir Smith-Marset, like there was something there. Then Gunnar ended up, I think, suffering a groin injury, if I'm not mistaken, landed on the IR, and Amir Smith-Marset didn't look back. But there's going to be room for special teams players. And Olszewski, he was earning, I think, second team reps as the slot guy last year. So now he's back with the team. It's something to monitor as a training camp goes and advances and goes on.
Sounds good. All right. That's all we have today. Big Blue Banter live from camp. Nick Filato, his report. We will have more of these in the future. We're going to also try to look to get on a guest or two from training camp as well. Just get some different perspectives in here. Forgot to do it, but I will do it now. Thank you so much to everybody who took the time last episode after I kind of pointed it out to help us get this channel growing and back on the right track. The last video we did, I do believe was one of our strongest. It also ended up playing out as one of our strongest. And the fact that you guys over 700 likes, a ton of views based on the fact that you were liking it and commenting. The only way this thing works for us is if you like this show right now, please click the like button. If you're watching and you enjoyed it and you don't click the like button, that hurts us. It doesn't give us a chance to grow. And leave a comment. I know a lot of you done a great job of this, but just leave any kind of comment in that section. Just help us, as I've always said, juice that algorithm up. A comment and a like, that's all we ever need. Obviously, subscribe if you haven't already, that too. But I saw yesterday, Nick, from the last video we did, somebody say, oh, I just found you guys, and this podcast is awesome. Just cool to see that. Like, one, they didn't know about us. How'd they find out about us? Probably because the rest of you guys and girls who hit the like button and commented, and then it popped up on YouTube. I see it all the time. I don't know about you, Nick, but I use YouTube all the time. It's become like my night thing. Instead of like watching TV shows on stream platforms, I've gotten addicted to a few different channels on YouTube, and I watch a lot of them now. Of course, a lot of that is golf instruction videos, but like, that's not the point here. The point is,
no wonder you're watching it before you go to sleep.
Yeah, the point is, when I do click my YouTube now, Nick, I see sometimes a golf instruction video that only has like a guy with a 2,000 subscriber thing, but it's popping at that moment. And we want to be that podcast that's popping at that moment. So someone like we saw yesterday who never heard of us is now listening and then subscribe. So please help us do that by hitting the like button and by writing in comments. That's all we'll ever ask. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon.